Hello guys, ASUS Gameplays, I'm Fabio Pisco and welcome to my channel. As for this video I bring you another video about lossless scaling, and I must tell you that lossless scaling is getting crazier.
30, cara, 30, cara.
We have frame generation from AMD, Nvidia and Intel. We have many other things, but it seems like Taichi, the creator of lossless scaling, is constantly doing new things that AMD and Nvidia wished they thought of. So currently I'm using the normal version of lossless scaling, which is the 3.1.0.2, and if you don't know what lossless scaling is, yes, it is a software on Steam. You just need to install Steam or have a Steam account, go buy the software, it costs like $5, then download the software and this menu will appear. Then you have the scaling options, which people don't really use much nowadays since we have the LSS4, XeSS2 and FSR4, and we have another 4 here for you. Which is the sponsor? Today's video sponsor is GVG Mode, bringing you lots of software deals like Windows 10, Windows 11, Office 2019 or 2021 with a new Windows 11 design, and for all of these you can use my SKG discount code for 30% off, getting a Windows 11 serial key for $22 and a Windows 10 one for only $15. Then use the key on your Windows settings and you'll have an activated system. But the most important thing is the frame generation side of things, because you can use frame generation on everything, even videos. Now, we have the type of lossless scaling frame generation, 1.1, 2.3 and 3.0, which is the best one. We had an update for the 3.0 version and it actually delivers less latency, of course, less latency and better quality, better performance overall, so it's a win-win situation. If your GPU can use the lossless scaling frame generation 3.0, use it. It is considerably better than the 2.3. We now, instead of having the fixed mode only, so before we only had the fixed mode and we had like multiplier, now we have multiplier one time. I actually need to try this to see what this does, but we have the 2 times multiplier. Let me see if I can get 1.0. Yeah, no, 0.5, 1.0 lol. So we have multiplier 1, multiplier 2, multiplier 3, and in the previous patches we had multiplier 4 as well. Now, recently, lossless scaling actually added the option to go 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, up to 20 times frame generation, and I tested it on this video passing right now on the screen. But what matters the most now is that we have the adaptive mode instead of having the fixed mode, where you just kind of lock the frame rates to a base frame rate. For example, if you have a 120 Hz display, you can lock your frames to 60 and then use lossless scaling to kind of generate frames up to 120. And for that, you use multiplier 2. If you want 60 to 180, you just go multiplier 3 and so on. With the adaptive mode, it works differently. You can, for example, lock the frames as well, or you can simply just go and leave your game running automatically and lossless scaling frame generation will work according to your base frames and your target. In this case, I have a 138 Hz monitor, 4K OLED from KDC. By the way, thanks KDC for sending the monitor. I have it for quite some time. I'll try to make a review as soon as possible. It's past due. Anyway, so I set it to 136 in order to not have FPS fluctuations going over 138 and then make the screen tear. So I usually target the frame rate 2 to 3 FPS below my refresh rate. In this case, 2 FPS, 136. And this is very, very important because it means that if I have, let's say, 60 base frame rates, lossless scaling will generate frames enough to get up to 136 FPS. If I have 80 FPS, it will still generate the remaining frames up to 136, and if I have 100 base FPS, it will also generate the remaining frames of up to 136. And that's why it is very important, because this is one of the things that I asked THS in the past, to kind of have a 0.5 multiplier in order to, for example, go to 100 FPS to 150. And now we don't really have that in the fixed mode, but we do have that in the adaptive mode, where it does that process automatically, going from 0.5, 0.7, 0.8, 1, 1.5, whatever. It just works, and it is very impressive. And just let me explain this because it is very important. And then we have the flow scale, which I thought was kind of the resolution of the frame generated, but it seems that's not the case. According to THS, the creator of Lossless Scaling, he sent me an email after my previous review, and he says, "Another review, what a pleasant surprise, thank you. I'd like to once again apologize for somewhat unclear explanation of some options in the UI, and I want to personally explain what resolution scale really is, or the flow, which is important. Lossless scaling frame generation works by calculating an approximate motion flow. Motion flow indicates where pixels or a group of pixels are moving. For lossless scaling frame generation, the motion flow is 1/4, meaning that one pixel represents the direction and distance of movement for an original 4x4 pixel block, meaning that instead of having, again, a 4x4 pixel block doing the motion, it uses 1, it seems. The resolution scale, which is what it was called before, now it is changed to flow, adjusts the resolution of the motion flow. In full, it should really be called motion flow resolution, again it was changed, so if you set it to 50%, one motion flow pixel will correspond to the movement of an 8x8 group of original pixels. This affects the precision of frame generation, obviously, so the quality, especially for very small details in the frame, and so on, so on, so on. But now it comes to what it really matters. For example, when you're using 4K, which is the case, feel free to set it to 50% and you'll be surprised because the difference in quality is very hard to notice, except perhaps for UI elements, which I did notice the difference, and you can even try going lower. A bonus to improved performance is greater smoothness, and yes, you do have slightly less quality when it comes to UI elements if you go and you just go to the flow resolution down. But at the same time, the FPS that the software takes to produce those generated frames is also less. So the FPS cost of generating frames is also less. So yeah, again, roughly speaking, 40 base frames with a resolution scale of 100% is approximately equivalent to 80 base FPS with a resolution scale of 50% from lossless scaling frame generation's perspective, meaning that the higher base frames you have, the lower you can go in terms of optical flow because you have more frames, more information, and so on. So basically that's how it works. For frame generation techniques, the higher the base frame you have, the better they work in terms of quality, and that's very important. And I know that you guys don't really care about this part, but for you guys that do, we also have more information of how this little adaptive sync generation works. So, according to THS, this build includes a new feature called Adaptive Frame Generation. Simply set a target frame rate and LS will automatically reach it, as long as you have the necessary GPU power, of course, using variable fraction multipliers. It's a set and forget feature, ideal for cases like a hard or soft capped games, where the frame rate isn't an integer multiplier of the refresh rate. Example 60, 144, 165, etc. Or of course uncapped games like we're gonna test. Adaptive mode doesn't rely on base frame rate as it always targets the desired frame rate and so provides overall better frame pacing compared to the fixed mode, generally. However, it generates more frames as it has to replace the most real frames, Yes, most of all overall frames are gonna be generated, increasing the load and decreasing the quality to some extent. So we can't really expect magic here. Now there's a very important information from THS. Please also pay attention to the new QE target option under the capture section. It is designed to accommodate different user preferences, whether prioritizing the lowest latency or achieving the smoothest experience. The default value of 1 should work well in most cases. However, if you plan to use adaptive sync, or in this case adaptive frame generation, when its multiplier often goes below 2 times, or when the base frame rate isn't capped, I recommend setting it to 2 for better results. Again, this is very important. And now on the software we have the capture option, and again the QE target, it is set automatically to 1, but you can set it to 2 again if you are running uncapped frame rates, or if you are, for example, upscaling, not generating frames from, let's say, 100 to 150, which goes below 2 times, which would be 200 FPS. So in that case, you want the QE target to be, let's say, 2 instead of just 1. If you are generating, let's say, from 50 to 150 to 150, then you're completely fine at 1. And now let's finally test some games like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. So we're now at Kingdom Come Deliverance, and the frame pacing that you're seeing, basically the frame time being with all those spikes, is because of the recording. I tried several things, but I can't really get rid of it. So at least with OBS, and it is with OBS that I can actually record lossless scaling at least properly. With the AMD recording, we don't really have these frame timing issues, but we can't record lossless scaling properly. Now, let's just forget about that and let's focus on how the software works. As you can see, we're running, we're running 4K, we're running FSR 3.1 performance, motion blur off, and so on, and we are recording, so of course we have less FPS. As for the graphics, my bad, it's high settings, basically with only textures set to ultra. And as we can see, for example, as you can see, we're having around 60 something, 65, nothing really relevant here. And again, we're recording. As soon as we press Ctrl Alt plus S and we go into lossless scaling frame generation, and again we are doing lossless scaling frame generation, adaptive 136, and as for the flow scale, I'm using 50%. So it is still working pretty decently. You can go up to 100% if you're doing it at 1440p because you have less pixels, or 70%. For now, I will follow THS's advice and we'll go to 50%, which is okay. So Ctrl Alt plus S, bam, lossless scaling enters, and we have a slightly lower base frame rate. So instead of 60 something, we have 50 something, so we lose about 50 FPS. But on the other hand, if you look at the generated frames, if you look there on the top left corner, you can see that we have 50 something, 55, in between 55 to 57 base frames, and then it generates the additional frames up to 135 or 136. And I picked the 7800 XT especially because this card is not, well, it is not a bad card for sure, but it is also not aimed entirely at 4K, especially for today's games. It just won't work well at high frames. It might be able to deliver 60, but over that it is really hard. And with this case scenario, we go, let's say, from 50 to 136. And for example, as I look to the side, it is slightly heavier, so instead of having 55 or 56, we have 51, 52, 50, but the frames overall are still 136. And if I look at the river, we have 59, so 61, we have more frames now, and the overall frames are still 136, meaning that the software is adjusting itself to deliver the best experience possible. And yeah, in terms of smoothness, it is definitely much better. We do have a bit of latency, and if you look at the HUD, especially here, in the middle, we can see some jittering, we can see some motion artifacts, but besides that, it just works great. And remember, we're actually using frame generation like 2 point something times, because we have 55 and we're going up to 136, so over 2 times frame generation, and it still looks pretty decent, which is neat. And I can go even further. I can go, for example, yeah, I can't really go ultra performance, I wish I could. Or let's try the opposite. Let's go, for example, to quality mode, and the base frame rates will get even lower. Now, as you can see, the base frame rates got to 43, 44, and we're still having 136 final frames. Now, the frame generation has to work more, so we have more motion artifacts there in the middle, in the crosshair, or whatever you want to call it. So we have more motion artifacts there. But besides that, yeah, we kind of feel it a bit jittery since we are using 3 times frame generation, but it is decent, at least decent. If we disable it and we go back to the base frame rate, so Ctrl Alt plus S again, we go back to 51, 52, and yeah, it is much worse. It is much worse, definitely. So I don't remember the time when I used to play at 50, 60 FPS, but I mean, it's just, it feels like crashing, like stuttering all the time. There's not enough information, and as soon as we use lossless scaling, Ctrl Alt plus S, as soon as we use lossless scaling, the base frame rate is lower for sure, but we have way more information and it feels way smoother. So frame generation technique is a technique to smoothen your frame rate. It won't give you more FPS per se because the latency gets increased as well, especially when it's a frame generation technique outside of the game, but it will definitely smooth your experience. So yeah, again, Ctrl Alt plus S, bam, and yeah. completely crashing. Now we try the adaptive frame generation, and remember that it said that if we are going for, let's say, uncapped frame rates, we should use the QE target up to 2. And we did have some latency there, so let's try the QE target to 2. Now again, Ctrl Alt plus S. And instead of 1, we have the QE target to 2, and it seems that the UI is actually doing the opposite. The UI isn't working as it should. Maybe I'm using still the quality mode, I guess, yeah. So I need to go to balanced, my bad. As soon as I go to balanced, we have more base frames, and yeah, the UI works slightly better. Now, what I can tell you is that since it seems to me at least that the latency isn't as high as it was before, when I put the QE target to 2, which shouldn't be the case. It should be higher, I guess, since we have more things on QE. But it definitely feels smoother. Since we have uncapped frame rates, it definitely feels smoother with a QE target 2 instead of 1. So yeah, if you're using uncapped frame rates with the adaptive mode, make sure to use the 2 times. But I'm now looking at this. Now that I'm using the 2 times, look at the USD there. Oh, that is crazy. Let's see with a QE target to 1, and yeah, it still happens. It is basically generating a lot of frames. So the flow should be the movement, and since we're moving here and the flow is only at 50%, that really happens. So this time let's try going to QE target 2, and then we raise the flow scale to, let's say, 80%. So we have more motion flow. Ctrl Alt plus S. And then our base frames are lower because we have more flow working, so the base frame rates are lower. Yeah, but at the same time, yes, the OSD doesn't really have as many issues as it had there. It's funny because here it works decently fine when we're moving, but as soon as we go to these parts, it's really, really bad here. I don't know what's going on, but it's really, really bad. Generally, it doesn't really happen, and of course, generally, you won't be playing with an Afterburner OSD of this size, so it's not really an issue, I would say. But yeah, very nice to say the least. It works decently well, and yeah, the frame generation quality is also better since I increased the flow. Nice. And I guess that's basically it for the new update. We have the adaptive mode now working properly. We can still go to the fixed mode. Let's try, for example, 2 times with the fixed mode with the flow scale up to 80%. And we're now running 60 something. As soon as we go, Ctrl Alt plus S, bam, and we go to lossless scaling from 60 something to 50 something, and now we're using the fixed mode up to 2 times, so 50 something to 107. And in this case scenario, we still have some UI issues, but for example, since we're using the fixed mode and we're not generating as much frames or as many frames, yeah, even here in this scenario where it was critical, we still have some issues, but not even close to what they were before with the adaptive mode, since we were generating more frames. So going to multiplier 3, I guess that the issues with the quality should appear as well. Ctrl Alt plus S, bam, and as soon as we go there, yes. So as soon as we go there, but still it's not as bad as it was before. It's still happening to some extent, but we are going from 50, 49 to 146, 150. It is not locked by any means. Now, if you really want to use lossless scaling in the best way that the software works, I would say that you need to lock your frames. You can use RTSS, or if you're using an AMD card and you are not using RTSS at all, or MS Afterburner at all, you can just go to the gaming, for example, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, just go to Radeon Chill, and let's say that we lock our base frame rates to 60. As soon as you lock your frame rates to 60, as you can see, even recording, the frame pacing just goes very, very good, because now the GPU is only at 90-70%, from 90 to 97, meaning that it isn't at 100%, meaning that the frame pacing gets way better. What we can do here now, for example, let's just reduce the settings a bit, just in order for me to show you how things work, like the global illumination and the shadows, I guess. Shader quality, shadows as well, to medium. Okay, so it's going better now, 85%, 89, something. So we are going at 60 FPS, and we are using the 2 times fixed mode. So we are going from 60 to 120. So Ctrl Alt plus S, bam. And now we're using lossless scaling frame generation from 57 to 115. And yeah, we can still reduce the flow. Again, let's go back. Let's go back and reduce the flow in order to have better performance. Reduce the flow to 50. Then we go Ctrl Alt plus S again. And as you can see, since the performance taken by lossless scaling to generate those frames is lower, since the flow resolution or the flow target is lower as well, yeah, we now go from 60 to 120. And yeah, it is very, very smooth. And it is way smoother because I lock the frame rates. And if you want the smoothest experience you can get, you want to lock the frame rates, because it just works much better when you lock the frame rates. Just much, much better. And remember of the QE target, now that we lock the frames, we should change back the QE target to 1 instead of 2. So we go here, QE target, 1. Yeah, latency wise it is better. And it is very, very smooth. We still have some issues here on the crosshair, but in many other games the issue won't be there. I tested them like The Witcher 3 and so on, and it works fine. 60, again, since we locked frames, it works much better. And if we go even further and we use the 3 times mode, but we still lock the frames, it works even better. 3 times fixed mode, but instead of locking the frames to 60, we will lock the frames to 50. And we are now going from 50 to 150 FPS. So we're generating every 1 frame, we are generating another 2, making it the 3 times. And yeah, even here, to 150, where I'm outside of my monitor's refresh rate, I can feel the smoothness. It is definitely better than it was at 50. Not definitely better, it's like miles better than it was at 50, and the smoothness is just crazy. So again, if you want the maximum smoothness that you can get, being it at adaptive or fixed, just lock your base frame rates. It's just much better. Honestly, just much better. Yeah. The adaptive mode with locked frame rates will still work decently, because imagine that you have locked frame rates to 100. But if there's some part of the game where the FPS go below 100, the adaptive mode will still generate more frames in order to reach the frame target that you put, so that you selected, which is a great thing. Overall, this just works great. The fixed mode is known by everyone and works great, and so does the adaptive mode, especially without the recording and so on. And just to finish the video, let me just give you some more examples. And we're playing Alan Wake 2, which on the AMD side still doesn't really have any kind of frame generation technique. Thank you, Remedy, I guess. And in this case, we have a bit more FPS than what we have with Kingdom Come Deliverance, so on the 70s instead of the 60s, we have it on the 70s, and we can even go lower, I believe. Oh, not lower, and somehow the FPS are going down. Anyway, but we can do, and we can reduce the settings. Let's say we're running performance mode. We can reduce the settings to medium, or in this case to high, with post-processing to medium. The quality doesn't really matter. I just want higher base frames in order for you to understand what I'm saying. So in this case, let's say that you have 70 base frames, and the higher the frame rate, in this case, the higher the frame rate, the more you can work with the adaptive mode. So again, we go to the adaptive mode, let's say lossless scaling frame generation adaptive, and again to 136. Then we go to Alan Wake. We go Ctrl Alt plus S. Oh, and it isn't working. Yeah, it isn't working. Lossless scaling doesn't really work. It did work before with Alan Wake, but it seems to not be working now, which is odd. But I guess it is adaptive mode with some games, because it did work before, or maybe this version just has some bugs. Let's try the fixed mode for 2 times and see if it works. And we go back to Alan Wake, Ctrl Alt plus S. And it just doesn't work. So I guess we'll end the video here, and THS needs to fix this issue. At least here it isn't working with Alan Wake. It is just crashing, being it the fixed or the adaptive mode in this version. Still, again, the adaptive mode, if you're using the adaptive mode just to finish, really just to finish, if you're using the adaptive mode, doesn't really matter your target frame rates. If you're using, and by the way, I was using a target base frame rate of 136, but I can just go lower. I can just go to 120, whatever. Even if I have a 240 Hz display, I can still put a target base frame rate of 120. You can do whatever you want to. It's not mandatory that you have it close to your refresh rate, because you might have to to frame generate more frames, and quality wise it won't look as good. So yeah, you can just go to 120, 110, whatever it makes you feel right. But remember, if you're using adaptive with uncapped base frames, you want to set the QE target to 2 according to THS in order to have better smoothness. Generally, if you're locking the frames, thing that you should do, or using the fixed mode, QE target up to 1 or to 1 should be what you want. Fixed multiplier 2, 3 times is great. If you're using 1440p, I would go 1440p 70, 80 base frames, which is advisable for frame generations to have at least, I would say, at least 60 base frames, better, more if possible, like 70, 80 if possible. But if you're going 1440p 60, I would use flow scale to 100. If you're going 1440p 80 or 90 and then going, imagine that you have a 240 Hz display and you can have like 80, 90 base frames, then I would say that you can go down to 80, it should be fine. If you're using 4K, yeah, 50, 60 should be in between these results, it should be completely fine. Even if you're using multiplier of 3, especially if you're using multiplier of 2, the quality will be very, very good, and the latency won't be as near as some people think it will be, so it is quite fine actually. And yeah, I guess that I've said everything that I needed to say here. I explained everything that I wanted to explain, because I have many videos on lossless scaling before. I tested it 10 times, 20 times mode. I tested several other things like the fixed mode, like the adaptive mode. I showed you the flow scale, I showed you the QE target. So I guess it is. Lossless scaling is just getting better and better, and is definitely a must buy if you are running, let's say, a very high refresh rate monitor on a computer that doesn't really have that much power. Imagine that your computer can only get up to 80 FPS or 70 FPS. You can just go a bit below. From 70, the program takes computing to generate frames. So from 70 base frames you would go, let's say, to 60, but then you could go up to 120, 180, whatever. So you could have much more smoothness in your system, which is really, really great. That's why so many people make videos about it, because it's definitely a very good program, especially now that we have the adaptive mode that generates frames based on your target FPS. That's very, very good. Good job, THS. Just fix the Alan Wake issue, I guess. Otherwise, it's great. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share this video, and leave your comment in the comment section. Let me know if you want to see more of it. Let me know if you want to test things. If I want to test things, not if you want to test things. But I will also be testing AFMF 2.1, and I'll be testing other things too, well, for you guys, like image sharpening 2, and so on, so on, so on. Thank you very much, and see you in the next video. Cheers.